All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. It's about 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started with this fourth session for our summer overlay series. My name is Krista Egger, and I lead our Green Communities work at Enterprise. And we're gathered here today to discuss how to green affordable housing with the New York City overlay of the 2020 Enterprise Green Communities criteria, a green building program designed for the affordable housing sector with a long track record of use in New York City. So with this fourth session of our July series, we'll be discussing the path to zero in the 2020 overlay with specific attention to changes in our mandatory energy efficiency requirements, use of the new reporting templates that correspond with Local Law 97, and how you all can design your projects with Local Law 97 targets in mind. So I'm really pleased that you all are here. And I'm really thankful for Frederick Zindell and Shelby O'Neill with Green Communities on the line here who have helped prepare for today's session. And I'm grateful for our special guest, Alyssa Knight with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability for coming to share out about Local Law 97 with all of us too. And Gabby Morris-Flores with Enterprise is also on the line to help make sure your experience is a good one with Zoom today. So really appreciate everyone being on the line today. Speaking of Zoom, if you are experiencing any difficulties with connectivity, try closing other windows or browsers you might have open. That usually helps with Zoom speed. And then if you're still having any issues, just drop a note in the chat box and we'll make sure that we respond right away so that you have a good experience. We are recording today's session and we'll email out that file for you all to share with your colleagues within the next week. And when we share that recording, we'll also include links to the recordings of the 3 previous sessions in case you'd like to listen back, along with links to resources that we've mentioned throughout this series. So you'll have everything in one place for reference moving forward. And some breaking news, we've added a 5th session that will hold 3 weeks from today at 2 o'clock on August 19th. And we're just going to be holding that as an open office hours type session. We're not going to be preparing substantial content. We're just coming to be prepared to answer any additional questions that you all have after you've spent more time with the overlay this month. To log on to that 5th session in 3 weeks, you'll use the same Zoom registration and log-on credentials that you're using today and that you've used for all of these series events. So nothing new for you to do then, just mark it on your calendar and we'll hope that you'll join us then. So with that, I'm going to share a couple of slides and orient us to the context of today. So here we go, the cover of today's session. And you know, this whole series that we've been doing in July has been done with the intention of highlighting an overview of the overlay at the beginning of the summer, and then going into some of the aspects of the 2020 overlay that have changed most significantly since the last version, so you all will be prepared about how to approach your next projects with the 2020 criteria. For today's session, we have these 3 outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. First, we hope that everyone attending this session by the end will be able to identify how criterion 5.1a and B requirements will affect different construction typologies, that you'll be able to review how and when to use the new templates for compliance with the category 5 criteria, including calculating project energy use intensity and emissions, and then finally be able to identify how the EUI and emissions calculations for the New York City overlay that we've built into the program relate to Local Law 97. And in order to do that, here's our agenda. I'll share a brief context on the path to zero in the 2020 criteria. Then I'll hand it over to Frederick, who will talk about the new construction and rehab requirements in the energy category in the overlay. Then we'll pass it over to Shelby, who will walk us through how to use the building performance standard templates. And then we'll end with Alyssa, who will be relating that information to Local Law 97. And then we'll close at the end with time for your questions. So please type in questions into the chat box as we move along. And anytime a question crosses your mind, we'll make sure to pose it to the right person on the line to get the information to you that you need. So with that, I'll share a little bit of context with the overlay and with the path to zero. So one of the most significant changes between 2015 and 2020 was actually how we're framing our approach to energy and the criteria. So historically, category 5 has all been about energy efficiency, or at least it's been called energy efficiency. And with 2020, we've renamed the category as operating energy to recognize that while energy efficiency is our foundation approach for the program, we really want to recognize the full range of options project teams have in considering what sources of energy to select for their project, whether they're going all electric or whether they're using renewables. And we wanted to recognize that criteria in this category influence energy use insofar as how the energy will be used while the building's placed in service, but does not touch on the energy use associated with creating the building's materials. So embodied emissions is touched on in our materials category in category 6, while category 5 is really solely about how the building will be designed in order to influence the energy that will be used while the building is placed in service. And then the other major change from a big picture perspective from 2015 to 2020 is this path to zero that you see a diagram of on your screen now that has the numbers of the criteria that start off this category in the overlay. So this path to zero is new. Some of the major changes are that we streamlined the mandatory criteria for you. There's just one for new construction and one for rehabs now with several options that you can choose to follow within those. You can pick your modeling pathway, whether you want to do ASHRAE or ERI. We're not dictating which one you should follow any longer. And then from 5.2a all the way to 5.5b, there are several optional criteria available for projects to earn additional points through additional efficiency, through adding renewables, or through electrification. And there are 2 tiers of certification available with the 2020 criteria, which projects are able to achieve if they design with aggressive levels of efficiency or are designed to be net zero. They'll achieve the highest tier, Green Communities Certification Plus. But Frederick will get into all the details about this in just a few minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing slides right now, and I'm going to instead share the criteria site with you. 1 second here. And for those of you all who have attended previous sessions of this series, you've seen me do this before, but just because this tool is so valuable, we're really just wanting to emphasize use of our online criteria site for those of y'all who haven't used it before. So here's the 2020 criteria site. And if you scroll down and you look at the toolbar on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see this navigation. The first thing to do is click the buttons up here that correspond with your project type. So whether you're new construction, substantial rehab, or mod rehab, and then whether you're urban and in New York City. Your selections here influence what content you'll see on all of the other pages of this site. So go ahead and check that filter to match with your project type. And then down here below, you can go into any of the different criterion in full to see the full requirement, rationale, recommendations, and resources over here. You can also go to the checklist page here to see a short version of the program, whereby you can download an Excel version of the checklist, which you can edit, a PDF version of the checklist, or you can use this online version of the checklist here, where clicking whether or not you're planning to comply with the mandatory criteria, yes or no, and how many points you'll be accruing with the optional criteria, you'll see your progress tracked in this bar to the right. So that's the checklist version. And then the other items I'll highlight for you again are within the appendices is where you can find the definitions for substantial rehab versus mod rehab. And then in the addenda and FAQ, you'll see those as they're published as we modify and build upon the criterion in years to come. And then if you go to New York City Overlay, you'll be able to access the HPD protocol for this program, which you see here. And then down here, you'll also see a comparison of the 2020 New York City Energy Code and Energy Star, which EPA developed for us, which is here. So you might find that handy. And then finally, with this last link on the navigation bar, templates for certification, you'll see links to all of the templates that we'll ask you to fill out when you're planning to submit your project for certification. And today we'll be focused on these templates here that fall under this building performance standard section of the page. So that's an orientation to the site and an overview about what we'll be talking about today. So Shelby, have any questions come in that we should answer right now, or are we ready to move along?
I think we can move on, Krista. I don't have any questions here.
Okay, thanks, Shelby. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Frederick.
Thanks, Krista, and hello, everybody. I'm just going to get my share screen up. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Frederick Zindell. I'm a program officer here on our Green Communities team. Some of you might recognize my name from the CERT box, so yeah, here's your face to match the name. So today I'm mainly going to be focused most of my time on 5.1a and b and highlight some other key changes in Category 5. However, before I get started, I'm going to share the link to the templates page that Krista just went over. If you could all go there and download the prescriptive path template, we'll be going over that one and using it as an example under Shelby's section, which is right after I'm done. So just to be prepared, if you can navigate there and download the prescriptive path template, that'd be great. Category 5, there have been a lot of changes to our building performance standard criteria from 2015 to 2020. So rather than having 4 criteria based on certain building features and scopes of work, we collapsed them into 2 criteria that outlines requirements based on whether your project is new construction or rehab, as Krista mentioned. All new construction projects will be following 5.1a, and under this requirement, you are required to certify to Energy Star's multifamily new construction, manufactured homes, and/or certified homes programs. Under these programs, you have the option to pursue the ERI, the prescriptive, or the ASHRAE path. In addition to certifying to Energy Star, you must also provide the energy use intensity and emissions information using the Local Law 97 carbon emissions calculator, which Shelby will go over, and Alyssa will also talk to you more about, I'm sure. So you'll record these numbers on our template and in the online portal. This requirement was designed to align with Energy Star's updated program and combines both 5.1a and b from our 2015 criteria. All rehab projects must follow 5.1b in our 2020 iteration. And this allows you to choose the ERI or ASHRAE option. Under this criterion, you're also required to report the EUI and emissions information in the portal and on the templates, which is the same as 5.1a. And the major change under this criterion from the 2015 version is that we are now requiring some commissioning of the building to be performed. So these criteria actually combine 5.1c and d from our 2015 version. For those of you who would be following the ERI option, we increased the efficiency standard from achieving a HERS rating of 85, which was the rating you were required to achieve in the 2015 version to achieving a HERS score of 80 or less in our 2020 version. We still have the same exception for rehab projects built before 1980 being allowed to achieve a HERS score of 100. So that hasn't updated. And if you're following the ASHRAE option, you'll be fairly familiar with the requirements in, that we updated in the standard from following ASHRAE 91-2010 to requiring project teams to show that the energy performance of the building will be equivalent to or better than ASHRAE 91-2013. This is a great update for the national requirement, but as I also review all your projects, I recall seeing a lot of New York City using 2013 in their 2015 projects to comply with 5.1D. The energy model does need to be created by a qualified energy services provider according to Appendix G 90.1 2016. So as Krista mentioned, the interesting thing about this category is that we charted a path to zero energy and moving to zero carbon. So if you joined last week, you got more of a breakdown of the criteria in the moving to zero energy category and the zero energy pieces. So I'm not going to go into great detail here. If you missed it, I encourage you to watch the recording. These categories are really great ways to earn points depending on the outcome of your solar approval form with HPD. I also understand that as of now, affordable housing doesn't fall under New York City's climate legislation, such as Local Law 97, 92, or 94. But I want to point out that these criteria are great steps toward meeting the goals of these local laws, or that these local laws aim to achieve. Out of this group of criteria, I'm going to call attention to our near zero certification, criterion 5.2b, which is under other efficiency measures, and our zero energy criterion 5.4, which is under our solar installation category here. 5.2b requires your project to certify to the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Homes certification, or the Passive House Institute Classic, or the FIAS certification. 5.4, zero energy, requires each building of your project to certify to the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Homes and install renewables, or procure renewable energy, or certify each building in a program such as FIAS Plus, Source Zero. There are a few other programs listed in our criteria manual as well. But the important thing that I want to point out in achieving points under either of these criteria, you will earn our newly developed second level of certification, Enterprise Green Communities Plus. And what this demonstrates is that your team is committed to approaching green building holistically, and that you double down on reducing your property's carbon emissions. So it's a really great path to earn points under the overlay and also earn that second tier of certification. So there are two optional strategies to move your project toward meeting zero carbon goals. And they are 5.5a and 5.5b. So first, random call is coming in. I don't usually use my headphones, but today I am and didn't expect that to happen. So apologies for that. But yeah, so 5.5a and 5.5b. The first option is to build an all electric ready property to help prepare for future electrification. This is a cost-effective approach in areas where installing renewables isn't feasible, or the electric grid for a given property is not yet clean. And then the second option is to build an all-electric property. This is under 5.5b. And as I'm sure you know, an all-electric property source operating emissions will be no worse than the emissions associated with the electric grid that provides power to the property. However, removing combustion fuels from the property itself eliminates emissions associated with non-renewable sources, even if generating renewable power is not feasible on site. And then there are also the public health benefits under this criterion, which is decreasing residents' exposures to the byproducts released from the process of combustion from natural gas and cooking burners. So that about wraps up moving to zero energy and achieving zero energy, and the moving to zero carbon pieces of this category. I'm going to skip over 5.6 and 5.7, which is our sizing and Energy Star appliance requirement, mainly because they are really fairly equivalent to 2015's 5.3 and 5.4. And I'm just going to jump right into 5.8, which is our lighting requirement. There are a lot of fun updates here. So energy reductions through efficient lighting projects contribute to lower utility costs and lower greenhouse gas emissions. So when looking at our lighting category, we made some noteworthy updates. First, we are now requiring that all permanently installed lighting fixtures, both interior and exterior, be high efficiency lighting that is capable of meeting the recommended light levels, which is the weighted average foot candle in the Illuminating Engineering Society Lighting Handbook. Second, we removed the dark sky requirement, which I just want to note that you can still use dark sky, a dark sky approved friendly fixture to comply. However, we added specifications for exterior lighting that all fixtures must meet. And these specifications do align with what most dark sky fixtures require. So, but there is a little ability in your team to be able to comply with this requirement and kind of overcome that dark sky requirement. So I do think dropping the requirement for the dark sky approved fixtures makes it easier for you. But as always, it is best practice to submit waivers and questions as early in the process as possible. So I just want to reinforce that if you are up against any challenging situations, to email us and let us talk it through. So moving from energy efficiency, zero energy, zero carbon, and lighting to our last two criteria in this category, it's 5.9 and 5.10. And these criteria focus on resilient energy systems. Starting out with criterion 5.9, it's focused on flood proofing. The idea behind this is to raise equipment from the first floor to ensure that essential building equipment is protected in case of a flood. The major update to this criterion is that projects that are located in special flood hazard areas designed by FEMA are required to adhere to AC 24 under our criterion 2.1, which exceeds the requirements for 5.9 under this criterion, which renders projects of this type ineligible to earn points under this criterion. So as part of the New York City Overlay, I know that projects located within the FEMA 100-year flood zones are already required to comply with New York City Building Code Appendix G. But teams can still earn points through this optional criterion for all projects within current and future flooding zone or flood zones by going above and beyond the building code to mitigate future flood risk. I encourage you to check out the New York City Overlay, as there are several options listed out to earn points for this criterion. And then lastly, 5.10 is focused on critical loads. This was designed with the idea that we expect to see more intense storms, flooding, wildfires, and heat waves due to climate change. This ensures that adequate emergency power is available to serve certain systems in the project. Systems should be sized to supply at least 3 of the most critical energy loads for at least 4 consecutive days. There's a list of critical energy loads in the manual and on our site, and you have 2 options to comply, either through islandable PV systems with battery storage and a system to switch to battery backup when the grid is down, or providing an efficient generator that will offer reliable electricity for critical circuits during power outages. So those are some of the updates to category 5. As I mentioned earlier, there are many strategies in the solar requirements to earn points as required by HPD's solar overlay. and a lot of great opportunities to really increase your impact and move to a zero carbon project. Before I pass it to Shelby, I'm just going to share the link again to the templates page. Please go ahead and download the prescriptive path as she'll be walking through this with you all, if you haven't already. And that is all I have. So Shelby, whenever you're ready, it's all you.
Awesome. Thanks, Frederick. Great to see you all. My name is Shelby O'Neill. I help lead the certification team at Enterprise. I work out of our DC office, but of course, presently at home or Iceland, if some of you will believe it, in order to avoid showing you all the laundry piles surrounding me right now. Now that Frederick has walked through the key Category 5 operating energy content updates, the 2020 criteria, I'd like to take a look at the new suite of templates to help you streamline the documentation process for compliance with mandatory building performance and optional moving to and zero energy measures. Just pulling up my deck here. So we'll spend the next 15-ish minutes orienting ourselves to the templates, actually accessing one of them now that hopefully you have it downloaded or there's room to do that. And I'll also be sharing some insight for successfully using the templates for certification. Please continue, as Krista said, to enter any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll do a big group Q&A at the end of the workshop to capture them. So as a reminder, all of the templates are available on the templates for certification page, and at the risk of belaboring it, it is really important that you know where to find them. So I'm back on our 2020 website, and I'm trying to scroll down to the templates for certification page. My Zoom bar is in my way. I'm sorry. There's always something. Great. So to locate all of the templates, just go to this page. And as shared before, these are the ones we'll be focusing on today. Just another opportunity to orient you to our fancy 2020 website. So back to the slide. So what are the building performance standard templates? Really, there are now 4 templates available for documenting compliance, as I said, with our mandatory building performance standard, whether you're rehab or new construction, and to calculate the energy use intensity and building carbon emissions, which, as Frederick noted, are new requirements for 2020. So when selecting a template, teams should really choose the appropriate one depending on which building performance option the project is following. So essentially, for new construction, we have the ASHRAE, ERI, and prescriptive. For rehabs, ASHRAE and ERI. And just a quick note that the ASHRAE template is the same for both new construction and rehab. The intent here is that any project team member can complete this documentation, which hopefully I can show you through the next few minutes. All of the information that's required is information that your energy consultant will have. So not asking for a whole lot of new information, but really asking that teams collect and document the information in a new way and share that with us. Essentially, we really want to save you time. We know that there are a couple new calculations, and we didn't want teams to need to complete another energy model or apply more resources to meet the requirements. So all templates, given the required input, will calculate these 2 data points, UI and emissions. And just speaking of this, if you can see here, I've circled a reference to New York City Local Law 97. Just a quick note about that. I do want to mention that specifically for New York City, when calculating your emissions, you'll need to consult New York City's Local Law 97 calculator and utilize those inputs instead of the national calculator as part of the template. I will let Alyssa from MOS tell us more about that, but please just be wary of that. One sort of handy feature of our templates is that once you enter your zip code when filling out the project information tab, which I'll get to, the template automatically triggers a highlight for New York City. So hopefully that will help teams, remind teams to input the correct information. And additionally, in addition to those features, given the opportunities for teams to go above and beyond in category 5 and pursue nearing or achieving zero energy, your renewables and electrification, the new templates are actually designed to fold in this information to help further streamline your documentation and calculations, hopefully making it easier for you all. So I'm going to actually open up one of the templates, and I've gone ahead and advanced and downloaded it, which is something I would recommend folks do, so that every time you access a template, it's the appropriate version. But I will speak more to that in a moment. For just the sake of example, I'm going to use the ASHRAE template to orient us to some key pieces, key elements here. Excuse me. Okay, so here we are. This is the same template that is located on that page. There are a few tabs that all templates share, and I'm just gonna adjust my screen to make sure you all can see that. The overview tab includes instructions, which are really important because there's a lot of fine print and reminders for how to complete the template. Also includes basic project information and energy information to input into the template, as well as provides the outputs that you'll need to complete your application online in the portal. And here we are again, the reference to New York City. I had entered a New York City zip code. I'll just show you if I remove it. No longer there. And there. So these are those fields I showed on the slides that will calculate inputs based on project information. And speaking to, let's see, so that's the overview tab, rather. There'll also be a pre-build tab and a post-build tab on all of the templates except for the prescriptive path. This is really where you'll input your projected performance information and as-built performance information. As you'll see, there are different colored fields on all of these tabs. And there's a little color code guide here, but so that you're aware, yellow means input information, and green includes instructions like I shared. Again, can include a lot of important links and reminders, so please take a look at the green. The yellow fields, do complete these fields. Some are drop downs and some are text fields. They're pretty straightforward, but always can check out the instructions. The gray fields illustrate data points that will be calculated from algorithms in the template based on the information from your project that you'll be inputting in the yellow fields. And the red fields, which if you see one means that maybe you have a typo. So just want you to be aware to look out for any flags. So just a couple nuances for certain criteria pathways. Again, this is the ASHRAE template. It should look very familiar. You'll notice that we are asking for common condition space, which is new, and of course, calculating the total emissions, which you'll find down here. In addition, there are a number of tabs to complete multiple models if following the ASHRAE pathway for either 51B or 51A. So all of those models can be wrapped into one template, which is pretty streamlined. I'll just stay here for a moment, but add a couple points that regarding the ERI template, both rehab and new construction templates are familiar. There are a couple new things to look out for. There's an extra tab for tested unit addresses, which is new at post-build. We're using an Energy Star proxy for the common space EUR based on a prototype. That's new. And then just the big difference between 5.1A and 5.1B ERI templates is, of course, there's no Energy Star info for 5.1B. Finally, the prescriptive path, which I'll pull up because will just lead us into a quick exercise. The prescriptive path is based on Energy Star prototype modeling. So with climate zone, Energy Star version, stories, and other information, you'll be able to obtain emissions and UI using this template. So let me quickly see if I can pull up. Okay. I'm sharing the prescriptive path template essentially because it's the simplest. Now that we've all become acquainted with the templates, wonder if we can get to know them a little better. Excuse me. Frederick asked that you all download the prescriptive path template while he was talking. It's a tongue twister. And if you did, that's great. If you didn't, feel free to follow along with me. So we're going to use this template to create a mock-up by just adding some required data points. So as I said, you would want to complete the yellow fields here. For today's purpose, it's not required. I just had a chance to fill it in under project information. Please do input a sample project zip code at the very least, as I've shown, and you can enter the code. Oops. Local energy code, climate zone. There are drop downs as well as text fields for some of them. And Energy Star version, let's say. And no, the project is not all electric. So for this activity, we will ignore the sections on renewables, but do recommend exploring the templates with that data if you're pursuing those additional optional criteria for nearing net zero or achieving zero energy. These two fields are where you'll add inputs from local law 97. And down here, if you just add a little bit of building information, I'll type it in. Let's say 4 stories, maybe 5,000 square feet, total floor area 10,000. Okay. And based on those required inputs, we'll see that the energy use intensity and annual emissions information has calculated. Again, we didn't walk through every step here, but I just wanted to give you an idea of where to add that information and see how the template functions. So I hope that was helpful. Just a couple keys to success before we move on to Alyssa. As a reminder, always download the new template from the website. I'm sure that we'll revise the template if there are bugs and things change. So please don't save them and reuse them from project to project. Do read the instructions. Important reminders are in there, such as the New York City calculator reminder and other pieces of information that will help you complete the templates effectively. They should be completed at pre-build and post-build. So the pre-build tab at pre-build, of course, and post-build updates, except for the prescriptive path, which is only due at post-build. Do refer to the documentation instructions matrix on that templates for certification page to make sure that you include all of the information and documentation needed for category 5, such as any additional HERS reports or certificates. And lastly, probably most critical, is that you do really familiarize yourself with these templates now and share them with your consultants. They're streamlined, but there's complexity to them, and you'll want to know what you're working with and get your hands a little dirty in the new process early on. And I think if you're able to do that, you'll find these are really helpful tools. So just to recap, we walked through these templates at a high level, practice using one of them, and reviewed keys to successfully work with these as part of your certification process. So thank you. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to Alyssa, who's joining us from Mayor's Office of Sustainability. Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Alyssa Knight. As Shelby mentioned, I work for the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. I'm a policy advisor there. So first I wanted to just give a brief overview of Local Law 97, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about Local Law 97 or the calculator, which I believe you have access to through the download that we just went through. So in May of last year, New York City passed the Climate Mobilization Act, which consisted of a suite of several local laws, one of which is Local Law 97. And Local Law 97 requires New York City buildings 25,000 square feet and above to meet strict greenhouse gas limits. And under Local Law 97, each building has a greenhouse gas budget based on the occupancy classifications within the space of their property. So currently those limits are assigned for 2024 and 2030. So if you're a multifamily building, you would take your carbon limit for that year, which is defined in the law, and multiply that by the building square footage to obtain the building's budget. And the way that the law works is that for any given reporting year, buildings must pay, will have to pay $268 per metric ton that their carbon output exceeds their limit. So this tool can be really great for informational purposes to determine how projects that are designed are like meeting or where they are in comparison to Local Law 97 targets. And the way that the tool is set up to work right now is that if you go onto the tool, you'll be able to select your occupancy class for your building, and you can enter in your utility usage, and then the tool will display your where you are in comparison to the 2024 and 2030 limits to just give some awareness and knowledge as to building performance. Those that do have to comply with the law use Portfolio Manager. So the tool is for an informational purposes, and it isn't for compliance at all, but it could be really helpful to determine how projects are being designed in comparison to the limits that are set by the law. So that's an overview of Local Law 97 and a little bit about the calculator. If you guys have any questions about that specifically, I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alyssa. That's a really helpful overview, and I'm glad to have you here as a resource for people as questions come in. We've gotten some questions in the chat box so far about some of the information that's been shared already, and we'll get to those in just a second, but just want to reiterate that the new mandatory requirements that Frederick went over for energy efficiency have really strict targets around energy efficiency. And then there's also, of course, the new requirement to report on EOI and emissions, but there's not a specific target which must be met for green communities for EOI and emissions. We're just getting people accustomed to the idea of like looking at that data and tracking it. And we would highly recommend that you compare it against what your targets would be under Local Law 97. As you're going through your design process, you can start to get accustomed to what actions make what kind of difference in your emissions profile for your building, so that when the time comes that emissions thresholds are required through the city or elsewhere, that you'll be prepared to respond to that. So that's how it all ties together. So I will pose some of the questions that have come in through the chat to the folks on the line here, and then please put more questions in the chat also that come up as we're going through this. So Shelby, I'm actually going to pose one question to you, if you wouldn't mind, that came in fairly early along in the presentation, and this is from Daniel. Says, can you talk about where modeling comes into the process workflow? He says that in his experience, they haven't received modeling until right before closing. Can you speak a little bit about maybe the ideal process for that modeling?
Thanks, Krista and Daniel. Good question. So let's see. Modeling can't really be completed until the building is designed, right? But we would hope that the design of the building or project is complete to the extent that well before closing, projected modeling could be completed. Given that we ask for projected modeling information prior to pre-build approval, and we may have questions about what's shared as part of that projected performance data, we'd want to make sure that projects have time to work through that or clarify with us before, the eve of closing. So earlier the better, but we are aware that design comes before modeling, and there are ways that we can work with you and New York City projects to make sure that you meet your timeline. Does that answer your question, Daniel?
That sounds great, Shelby. And I just want to also emphasize that we hope that the modeling is part of design, that you're using the results of the model in terms of efficiency and emissions and whatnot to influence the design. That's why it's an early part of the process. So, Frederick, maybe you can take this one. Manuela has asked if we could describe the EGC Plus certification process a little bit more, and whether or not energy is the only category involved with that higher tier of certification.
Yeah, sure. So short answer is yes, energy is the only category involved. The two criteria that I pointed out, which was 5.2b and 5.4, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, are the, if you achieve points in either one of them, you'll get Enterprise Certification Plus. And this is really, the program is really just in relation to developing a new tier to encourage teams to really reach and exceed more energy efficiency and carbon reduction goals. So that was our response to really encourage teams to pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then Shelby, it looks like you answered Katie's question in the chat, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what projects should do if they have several buildings as part of one project, and how that relates to their use of the templates. And you're muted, Shelby.
A tricky mute button. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Katie. Great to hear from you. So we have now a sort of more methodical process for assessing mid to high-rise scattered site projects and sampling for those projects. So teams that may be following the ASHRAE path, either for a new construction or rehab project, could potentially have, I don't know, like 15 or 20 buildings as part of their package with HPD. And many of the projects, let's see, they could be of various sizes and have different systems, in which case we understand that modeling all of them is a heavy lift, but we'd want to work with you to understand which models could be taken to sample the project. So that clustering form, which I'll paste a link to that you referenced, is a way that we do that. We have a clustering form process now to assess what buildings need to be modeled. And then with the new ASHRAE template, you'd be able to input your data for the whole project, not just the building, in one template, and inform your outputs that you'll need. But I'll just post that link if that's helpful.
Yep, great. And then Alyssa, a question hasn't come in here yet, but I wonder if you could share anything that might be useful based on what you've learned about, the benchmarking of energy use in the city of certain building types and how that compares to the local law 97 targets, and if there's anything that you could say about whether or not meeting these targets in a project would require much more aggressive levels of efficiency in buildings, or anything you could speak to that, just to give people a heads up about what to expect.
Yeah, I'd say that the 2024 targets, like a majority of buildings in New York City, are already meeting the targets or limits that are placed on buildings right now. So that's, I'd say, a good thing. 2030, though, the targets are a lot more stringent. So there will be a lot more work that will have to be done in order to meet the 2030 limits for sure. But as of, right now for 2024, most buildings are in good shape. So there is the time to think about different ECMs that the building would have to undertake in order to meet the 2030 targets, definitely.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful. And then going back to another question that was asked kind of early in the session, Frederick, I think you answered this in the chat, but just for the sake of everybody, or people who might just be on the phone and not seeing the chat right now, for 2015 projects, can they follow the 2020 lighting criteria requirements for exterior fixtures in lieu of dark sky? Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as a general comment is that any equivalent criterion from 2015, if you want to pursue the 2020 version, you are allowed to do that. Process-wise, you'll still need to fill out a waiver, but we have a much more streamlined waiver process where, as long as you provide the information that you are able to comply with 2020 version, we'll verify that and we'll approve the waiver as is. So that does apply to our 5.8 lighting requirement in lieu of our 5.5 in 2015. So yes, teams are welcome to do that.
Great, thanks. Cool, all right. Sounds good. Let's see, it looks like we just got a new question in from Swetha, and let's see. It looks like there's a question about how to consolidate or streamline the modeling for a project that might be pursuing the ASHRAE and the ERI path at the same time, for instance. Could you speak to that, Shelby?
Yeah, so traditionally we would accept these as separate projects. All buildings as part of a certification project need to follow the same criteria profile and be brought to the same standard of performance and health and sustainable benefits in the design provided to residents. So we would talk to you really specifically if understand, you know, what the real needs are for your project behind submitting one certification. But if you're following the ASHRAE and ERI path, we would want to see both both templates or represented, both templates with the outputs for each option. And I'm just reading the rest of the question here. It depends on the project and the size of the project. It's possible that all buildings could comply with the same path. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tripped up on the nuance, but you can choose either pathway so long as you have more than one story, more than one dwelling unit.
Yeah, and maybe to put a finer point on the comparison between 2015 and 2020 for that is that, you know, in 2015, we had separate criteria depending on if you were low rise or mid or high rise. So if you had buildings of those two different types, you had to submit two different project applications in our portal. Now, what's 2020, that's not the case. If all of your buildings are new construction, regardless of the mix of heights and regardless of the mix of energy modeling approaches you want to take, just one submission is needed. Although, as Shelby said, you may need to submit multiple templates if you are using multiple modeling pathways. But I think there's a distinction there between 2015 and 2020 in that way with the number of certification applications at least. And then let's see, the latest question here is, how are we supposed to reconcile the 55A/B criteria towards electrification with the highest greenhouse gas multiplier that Local Law 87 applies to electric? So I wonder, Alyssa, if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit about the greenhouse gas multipliers in Local Law 97, and then we can relate that back to our 5.5 criterion.
Well, the multipliers for each fuel type is what's designated in EPA Portfolio Manager. So I'm not sure, maybe I don't understand the question about the highest multiplier.
Yeah, so maybe Daniel, if you could clarify in the chat, that would be great. And in the meantime, I'll just share, you know, in the templates that Shelby showed, some of those tabs in those templates, assuming you're doing modeling, either through ERI or ASHRAE, are about the outputs from your energy model in terms of how much energy will be used by fuel type. And then you'll put that information into New York's Local Law 97 emissions calculator, so that we're using New York's greenhouse gas multipliers and aligning with Local Law 97 to calculate emissions. And then you'll take that number, come back to our template, plug it in, so that we've developed this workaround in a sense for Local Law 97, so that the emissions that projects are calculating in New York City for green communities are done in the exact same way that Local Law 97 requires it be done. We're using a slightly different methodology for the rest of the country. But maybe that helps a little bit in terms of we are relying on the Local Law 97 multipliers and calculator for emissions in the city. But happy to answer any other questions that come in. And Gabby, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link to the evaluation in the chat, that would be great. And anyone who's on the line, we'd really appreciate you filling out that evaluation form, and there's a space there for additional questions. And if you do include any questions there, we'll make sure to email back a response to everybody on the line. The evaluations are anonymous, so we won't just send it back to you because we won't know who you are, but we'll send it back to everyone. And then in the next few days, we'll send out an email with links to the recordings for all 4 sessions from this July, along with additional resources. And then we look forward to seeing you in a few weeks on August 19th for an office hours session where we'll just be ready to answer any questions that you have. And depending on the number of people that come and the types of questions that are brought up, we can split into breakout rooms and Zoom. So we make sure you get the type of attention you need. So really appreciate it again, and hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. And just again, big thanks to Alyssa and Shelby and Frederick and Gabby for preparing and sharing with you all today. So see you all again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all for joining. Take care.